Welcome to Delta Days. Well, we talked about senior care, but now what about the person taking care of the senior? How well do you take care of yourself when you're trying to take care of your elderly relative? Sit back and listen to some tips from Mr. Eldercare himself.
Hello, my name is Derrick McDaniel. I'm Mr. Eldercare 101, and I've been invited to come and give you an overview of what we call caring for the caregiver. And I've been invited by Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, Bronx chapter. And so I'm actually really excited to do this because I grew up in the Bronx, so this is kind of like coming home for me. But again, this is caring for the caregiver. So we'll just jump right into this, and let's see if we can get you some information that will be helpful. So the book you see in front of you, Eldercare: The Essential Guide to Caring for Your Loved One and Yourself. That's a book I wrote a few years back. It was very well received, very highly regarded, and the focus is really in the title. It's the essential guide to caring for your loved one and yourself. So if you think about elder care as two sides of the same coin, well, on one side of the coin, you're going to have the care recipient, that's your aging loved one. And then on the other side, that's going to be the caregiver. So we're going to focus tonight's presentation, or today's presentation, on the side of the coin that focuses on the caregiver. Now, in terms of me and my background, I'm an author, I'm an educator, I'm a professional speaker, and essentially I'm a consultant to organizations, helping them understand how the challenges of their workforce, in terms of the elder care challenges of their workforce, impacts the employees themselves as well as the overall organization. So that's what I do. And the as featured in block there are just various places that I've been featured or interviewed or what have you. Again, this isn't really about me, so we're going to skip right in. Now, here we have of an infographic that we put together, and the real focus here is the factoid for right now. And just by way of overview, elder care is a huge issue in this country right now. Everyone's heard of the baby boomers, and essentially what that means is every day, on average, over 10,000 people turn 65 in America. Once they turn 65, they will live approximately 20 years, I mean, on average. And women live slightly longer, men live slightly less, but if when you average it out, your life expectancy is roughly 85. And with that, as people age, they require more care. Obviously, this is subjective. Some people will require a lot of care, other folks will require less. But the average person, in fact, over 70% of people will require care as they get older. Now, how that's relevant here tonight is over 80% of elder care is provided exclusively by family and friends. When you see those commercials about home care, or when you see commercials about residential environments and things of such, they're really only talking about 20% of the market. In general, 80% of elder care is provided exclusively by friends and family with no outside professional intervention. So that's huge in terms of how it impacts the individuals. And the second bullet point there says, average caregiver dedicates 24.4 hours per week. That's true, but that word average is key in that sentence. If you are co-located, i.e. living with the person, or if they are over 75, or if they're dealing with, let's say, one of the cognitive issues like Alzheimer's, something like that, you will put in well over 40 hours per week. So, and that's another job for folks who are working. So it can really impact the caregivers. We've put together here what we call 4 quadrants of impacts to caregivers. There's career, there's health, there's finances, and then there's relationships. I'll break them down for you very quickly. And because of the brevity of this presentation, can't get too deep into them, but I did want to expose folks to them because they are significant and the impacts can be devastating on the caregivers themselves. So, and at the end, I'll give you some places where you can look for information and so forth. But so overall, in terms of careers for working caregivers, 1 out of every 5 employees in America today is a caregiver to an aging loved one. So it's a significant portion of the workforce. And once a person becomes a caregiver, almost 70% start having some sort of work-related difficulties. That could be anything from going to work late, having to leave early, having to miss meetings, or blowing through deliverable dates, and so on and so forth, because they just they get sidetracked and they get focused on caring for their aging loved one. And more often than not, when something happens, it becomes something that you have to focus on. It isn't something that you can just delay. So it starts to impact work. One of the biggest things is that caregivers actually, a lot of caregivers eventually end up leaving the workforce. And when they do leave the workforce, that sort of takes us into the second one, which is the finances. Well, on average, when a woman leaves the workforce, she leaves over $324,000 on the table. She forfeits that. So, and that's in terms of salary, Social Security payments, 401k matches, things, all of those sorts of things. So it's significant. For men, it's about 284,000, but still a lot of money. We move into health. Health is huge. I mean, the long and short of it is, folks get so caught up in caring for their aging loved ones that they don't have time to care for themselves. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So you start to find that you don't get enough sleep. You don't get enough exercise. You start to eat improperly because you're always eating on the run. You don't get a chance to exercise. And that's significant because it's not only about, let's say, something like weight gain, but caregivers start to suffer from diabetes. They start to suffer from various cardiac issues. They start to suffer from hypertension, strokes. So it's a significant issue. And please take that one very, very serious. You have to take care of yourself while you're taking care of someone else. Because let's just be really blunt about it. You can't care for someone else if you're in the sick bed next to them. Or even worse, if you're in the grave before them. You know, I hate to put such a fine point on it, but it's significant. And the fourth quadrant is relationships. I mean, bluntly put, at the end of the day, a lot of relationships in terms of, let's say, romantic relationships are negatively impacted because someone is so focused on caring for mom or dad that they don't have time to care for a significant other. The second type of relationship is parent-child. Over 37% of caregivers are what we call in the sandwich generation, so to speak, where they're caring for an aging loved one and they're caring for a child that's 18 or younger, still living at home. So just simply put, there were so many hours in a day. And so the children and that relationship tends to really be negatively impacted because you're taking care of mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, your favorite uncle, whoever. So you start missing their recitals, you start missing their little league games, you start missing their parent-teacher conferences. It's significant. And then the last one, and this one is one that it's difficult to explain, but it's huge. Sibling and other family dynamics. And if you have to put a very fine point on it, for reasons that are difficult to articulate, there can be 5 siblings, there can be 50 siblings. Almost inevitably, there's one sibling that does the vast amount of the elder care, and the other siblings are upset about the way they're doing it, which of course makes them upset because they're doing all the work. So the sibling dynamic is very difficult, and it is common. It is incredibly common that there starts to be problems in that relationship. So you want to start managing through those sorts of problems right up front. And so those are the 4 quadrants. And for this presentation, obviously, that we can't really drill down into the various solutions and mitigations and so on and so forth, but I at least wanted to bring them to your attention, let you know that these are things that you should look out for. They are very common. Don't stress it if you are going through this, because there are resources out there. Know that you are not the only one, because that's another issue with caregivers. They tend to feel that they're the only one going through whatever their challenges are. While your particular challenges may be unique to you, I assure you, almost every caregiver has to go through these challenges in one shape, form, or another one. So don't let it get you down. You just have to keep on plugging through, and check out the Mr. Eldercare 101.com website. There's a lot of free information out there. There's also a fair amount of free information out on the eldercareeducationcenter.com website. And we'll get you through it. So don't worry. I promise you we'll get you through it. Here, in terms of helping you get through it, here are some thoughts and some mitigation. Number one, perform a family elder care assessment right now. What that really comes down to is start to understand if you are a potential caregiver, and I define a potential caregiver as anyone who has aging loved ones. Whether you think you're going to be that caregiver or not, you should still give it some thought, because things happen. I myself, for example, I was not the designated caregiver for my grandmother. My mom was, but my mom died unexpectedly, and all of a sudden, I became the caregiver to my grandmother. It happened really quickly. So basically, in a 3-hour time frame, I went from carefree to caregiver, and that was basically how much time it took for me to get a phone call saying my mom got rushed to the hospital, and the time that the doctor came and said, "We're sorry, sir, but your mom is gone." So it can happen very quickly, and I'm telling you from over 2 decades of experience in this area, the best thing you can do is prepare early, because the more preparation you do up front, the better your quality of life will be, and the better the quality of life and care for the care recipient will be. So prepare up front. So we'll get started with doing the family elder care assessment, which really just comes down to, is there anyone in your life who you could, even through some crazy twist of fate, end up caring for? And if it is, then you want to start thinking about that right now. Think about who else in your sphere, in your world, could help caring. Do you have siblings? Do you have cousins? Maybe do you have parents, if you're thinking about grandparents and things of such, or maybe even your parent siblings who may be younger or healthier or in better shape physically, things like that. You want to give it some thought up front and then start communicating with people. So, and that leads us into the second bullet, which is determine the who, the when, and the where, and the how. Really, that's just the nuts and bolts of it. If mom needs care, start thinking about who will care for mom. Things that you might want to consider: who are the people who are physically closest to mom? Who has the right temperament for mom? Because the person who's closest may not be the best person if the temperament isn't right, or if the relationship isn't as good. Because oftentimes parents have better or slightly less better relationships with certain children. So you want to make sure that the person is the best suited. Now, for folks who may not be able to be there, and this is just one technique to help deal with these sort of things in terms of mitigation. Well, we're living in an online culture now, especially with COVID and so on and so forth. So, let's say mom lives in New York, but one of her children lives in California. Well, obviously that person can't be there to help out physically. They can do a lot of stuff online, up to and including buying groceries and having the groceries delivered. I remember when I was caring for my grandmother, I used to go grocery shopping every week for her, and I didn't mind doing it. I loved doing it, in fact, because she was good. And it was just great to hang out with her all the time. But that took a significant amount of time. So if you're the caregiver who's on site and you're helping out with, I don't know, helping with maybe keeping the house clean and doing laundry and maybe running back and forth to the post office or driving them back and forth to the doctor, having someone ordering the groceries online and having them delivered is a significant time save. Or they're having them deal with the insurance companies and things like that. You want to platoon the caregiving out as much as humanly possible. Let's see, investigate caregiving options, cost, payment sources. That's we have whole entire courses on how to pay for elder care. And let me tell you, for the folks who live in the Bronx, New York is the single best state in the country to get old in. There are so many options, and I don't have time to get into them right now, but just one in particular, the Medicaid financial thresholds that they always tell you are hard and rigid and so on and so forth, and there's no way to get around them. That's not true. Trust me when I tell you. There are a whole bunch of workarounds, and it drives me nuts when I see people spin down, because that's their favorite phrase, spin down their life savings so they can get down underneath that financial threshold. There are a myriad of ways. It's way too much for me to go into right now, but please know, and you have to ask the right people about this, because a lot of people don't know the techniques of how to get around those regulations legally. Keyword, legally. So because they've been trained on what the rules are, but as you might understand, no one is trained on how to get around their own rules. It's kind of like going to the IRS and asking for tax planning advice. You don't do that. You have to go to the right people to ask them how to legally get around those financial thresholds. But please trust me when I say there are a lot of ways to get around them legally. So you just have to ask the right people. So let's see, consider the impacts to the caregivers. Well, we've already talked about that one. In terms of the four quadrants, health, career, the finances, and other relationships, create that action plan. You want to really think it through. I mean, just at a very, very high level, who's going to do what, when, and always have a backup plan. And remember, as people age, they tend to decline more and more. So build that into your plan in terms of, if it's going to take 10 hours a week now, well, a few years down the line, it's more than likely going to take more than 10 hours. So you want to factor that sort of stuff. And now, let's see, take control of your own life. Yes, as a caregiver, you do not want to lose your own life. You have to have that balance because caregiver burnout is real. One of the big issues in caregiving is premature nursing home placement for care recipients. And the primary cause of the premature placements is that caregivers burn out and they just can't do it anymore. So you have to take control and keep a balance. And one of the things that I always tell people is sometimes, even though you feel guilty, and that's huge because I felt it myself and almost every caregiver I've ever talked to feels it. You feel guilty taking time for yourself when there's something that needs to be done for mom, dad, or whatever. You have to change your mentality on that and really understand that by doing stuff for yourself, you really are doing stuff for them. By taking care of yourself, you are better enabling yourself to take care of them. So that is key. And I know it's a mental game, but you have to do it. You have to do it. It's in their best interest and it's in yours as a caregiver. Finally, let's see. I said that. I said this. You really can't take care of someone else if you're in the sick bed next to them. So, so with that, we'll run real quick the resources. Mr. Eldercare 101. There's a lot of free information on the website. Let's see, the eldercareeducationcenter.com. That's also one of our properties, and there's a lot of free information there. There are classes and things of such on there. You'll find we have entire courses actually dedicated to how to pay for elder care, how to care for yourself, while caring for an aging loved one. Let's see, courses on the legal documents, courses on how to deal with being in elder care while still working, like how to deal with the workplace sort of issue, talk to HR and things of such, and make sure you get all of the things that you really are entitled to. Let's see, we also have the American Red Cross, the Family Caregiver Alliance, the National Association of Social Workers. There's AARP. There's always the Department of Aging. And so you can look those sort of things up. And I think just to round this out, here's my contact information. Here, it's Derrick. Email's always best. Let's see. So it's Derrick at Mr. Mr. Eldercare, ELDERARE 101.com. So please, if you have questions or what have you, feel free to reach out to me. I hope the information is helpful to you. And with that, I will say good luck on your caregiving journeys.